Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Dennis, and today we'll be talking about scaling content creation with Foleon. Sorry, one sec. And joining me today are both Adrie and Jerry from the Foleon team. I'll give them some time to introduce themselves now. So here they are. Adrie, if you could start, please.
Yeah, sure. I wanted to look as similar as possible to Dennis today because he's a really cool guy. We did not coordinate, unfortunately. So my name is Adrie Smith. I'm the content strategist here at Foleon. My job is really to work with customers to find the ideal strategic fit for Foleon and to help them out with their content processes and all of the stuff around making your content successful and engaging. But really excited to be here and share some of my experience scaling content. I have a few tips for you guys, and look forward also to hearing from Jerry, who's going to give you some real practical insights.
Hey, my name is Jerry Virta, and I'm the content ops here at Foleon. And I'll tell you more about my job a bit later, but basically I'm here to build and work on the internal content processes, finding the best ways to really create top-notch Foleon docs, and making sure that the content creation runs smoothly in our company.
Great, thank you guys. My name is Dennis. I do customer marketing here at Foleon, and I'm also the host for today's webinar. So before we start, I want to give some quick notes. You'll receive the recording and the slides once the webinar has concluded. Please keep an eye out for our polls, which will run during the webinar. And be sure to ask your questions in the questions area. So at the right-hand side of the webinar, you'll find our sidebar. There at the very top, there's a designated area for questions. So if you have a question that you would really like to see answered, please make sure to submit it there, because then it will find its way to us. And of course, you can use the chat below to share your thoughts, but also connect with each other. So I think to start, it would be great if all of you could say hi. I see some of people already did that, but also tell us where you're joining us from today, what country, because it's always fun to see. So let's get into it. So today, as you all know, there's a constant push to publish more content better and faster than ever before. But that comes with a catch, because how do you ensure that you're producing the right quantity of content while also keeping the quality at the level that you would want it to be? That's of course no easy feat, and also why we're hosting this webinar today. So without further ado, I'll give the mic over to Adrie, who will be talking about scaling content creation.
Yeah, all right. Really excited to see all of you guys. Well, not see all of you guys, but experience everyone here in the webinar. So I was kind of prompted to put together some methods to scale your content creation. I have three ready for you guys today. Some are more obvious than others, and basically we're just going to try to get to the bottom of not just how to scale your content and create more content, but actually to create content that is really high quality and is going to be engaging with your target audience. So it's not just about more, it's also about better. So we'll get to some of the kind of pitfalls of each method and what to avoid. And then, of course, for one of these methods, Jerry from Foleon, he's going to share with you guys how he's actually implemented it here. So the first method, you want to scale your content creation. So I think this is probably the most, I would say, most common method that I see is usually when things are going well, your company really likes the content that you're creating, you decide actually, or you get budget for a new hire. That's really, really exciting. And it can definitely be an opportunity to scale your content. But there are a few things to watch out for because, as we all know, more is not always better. So we want to figure out how to actually make this better. So this is usually in a situation where you have a 1 or 2 person band or a very small team. And that small team has actually created probably a content strategy, a lot of content strategy, albeit probably pretty informal. There's a lot of stuff that goes into a content strategy that is usually developed over time and may slowly evolve. But in this scenario, very often the content strategy is kind of contained to, I would say like unideal channels like direct messaging, no formalization. And generally speaking, when I talk to people who are in this sort of situation, who are looking to add one more person to the mix to scale their content creation, usually when I ask them about their content strategy, they'll usually give me the answer that, yeah, where is it? It's all up here. So it's really sitting, very informally with them, very personally. There's very, very limited documentation, if any at all. And this can be a really big problem when you're looking to scale your content creation. What works for one person is not actually going to work for 5. So imagine you hire that person on, you hire that one person to scale your content creation. They're going to really struggle to figure out what your content strategy is. You'll have to spend a lot of one-on-one time with them to make sure that they know your brand guidelines, to make sure that, they're aware of a lot of your processes and how your content creation actually works. And that definitely won't work for more than one hire. Additionally, it can also lead to a lot of inconsistent application. And that's also potentially a problem going forward. I'm not sure how many of you guys have perhaps already experienced this. I would love to hear from you guys in the comments. But there are a few ways of avoiding this. But just to kind of reinforce the point, adding one more person to the mix is not necessarily going to help you scale your content. You're going to create potentially a knowledge bottleneck with yourself, potentially, and also that person if they're really one-to-one onboarded. This is definitely not scalable. As I said before, they're going to have to spend a lot more one-on-one time with any sequential hires. But then additionally, because of the lack of formalization, it can lead to a lot of inconsistent application. This can be overall a pretty dangerous, combination for your brand. I'm not sure. Of course, everyone wants a consistent brand. You definitely want processes that are repeatable, scalable, everyone's onboarded. So just adding one more person to the mix is not going to necessarily help you scale your content. So how do you actually do this? And of course, this is, I'm going to sound like a broken record later on, but this is something that I tell to almost every single one of our Foleon customers here, is it's really, really important to document everything. Make sure that you have your content strategy, your brand principles, even your content ops really well documented, so that any of these hires that you make in order to scale your content creation can be onboarded at any time and at the pace that's relevant for them. Additionally, also when speaking to our customers, I do get a lot of a little bit of hesitance when they see this kind of long laundry list of things that they might need to document in order to make that first hire. I always say, try to start with the things that you already have, that you already really know really well, and that form the foundation of the content strategy that you have. Of course, in an ideal world, we would have all of these things, but start going through it and prioritizing based off of what you currently have. Even just a little bit of documentation will make that one-on-one time more important, so that you can focus on the things that actually need a lot more attention, rather than maybe a bit more of the process-oriented stuff that, while important, they can definitely consume in a written version. And one of the things that I also work with, quite a few Foleon customers are on, is your working process for your content creation. And this is really the foundation for creating good content, and something that I often see is missing. Making sure that your process, your content creation process, is documented, so that anyone involved in your content creation knows what's happening and when, is extremely important. And this also goes for this method of scaling your content creation. So if you want to add more people to your content creation team, it's really important you have a documented working process. If you ever need help with anything in this area, in the Foleon context, yeah, you'll have my details so that you can always give me a call. And so how do you make sure that your team is actually going to be set up in a scalable way in Foleon? Well, we do recommend training for all Foleon users. So this is, again, yeah, knowing, understanding your content creation process, but also, yeah, the tools that you use. You can either do this through our professional services team or the Foleon Academy. There's a link there. If you haven't already trained you or your team up, it's a really important thing to do. Also, make sure that your foundations are set up really well. So the templates, the themes, your projects are already set up in your account so that anyone who enters your account is ready to start from day one. And then, of course, documentation, making sure that, yeah, your Foleon, how you use Foleon as a team is really well documented. So if there are any rules around, yeah, the way that you save your Foleon docs or the way that they're reviewed, make sure that those are documented and shared across the team. And then, of course, you might want to have a look at future-proofing your processes. So this is something that I think is very, must be taken in context. So there's no generalization that can be made about this. But I do think that most of the time, what works for a very small team is not going to work for a very large team. So do really look at your processes critically and say, okay, well, this might work for me and another person, but is it actually going to work for, let's just say, 5+ people? Really important to look at setting up your processes and making sure that you're future-proofing them as well. So we have some polls that I think Dennis just ran.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I'm pulling that up for you.
So we just want to see, yeah, how big your marketing or comms team is. Okay, so 2 to 5 people. You guys are in a pretty sweet spot. That's the most popular here. Yeah, I think this is also the moment where teams can very often get bigger. And so scaling, making sure that your processes are really set up for scale will be really important, and making sure that they're also documented. All right, back to the slides. So let's just say you say, okay, that method is not for me. Well, I have another method for you. And one that I see very often is, yeah, more languages. So let's just say you produce content in English. Why not translate it and put it into Spanish and German? Well, automatically you have 200 times more content than you had yesterday. And very often people think it is that simple. So you have your process. This is obviously very basic, but you decide, okay, well, I'm just going to translate all of that content and publish it. And then you're going to have more content as a result. So any piece of content that you create can just be translated in order to create more content and reach more people. Unfortunately, yeah, well, translation is not localization. I would love to hear how many of you guys, for how many of you guys this is actually a new concept. But localization is really, really, I would say, really different. If you can imagine creating a internal magazine, or let's just say a magazine for your employees, and creating it in Spanish for both your Argentinian office and your Spanish office. Well, yeah, I'm not sure how many from each office it will actually really engage, seeing as the currency is very different, culture is very different, and probably what's happening in each office, so your Argentinian office and your Spanish office, is going to be really different. So just because you translated the content doesn't mean it will actually resonate with that particular audience. So localization covers a really broad range of, yeah, I guess like adjustments that need to be made, not just language-wise, though language is important. It's also might have to do with the images that you include, the currency, some certain topics, even phrases that you might use, just to make sure that the content really actually resonates with the people that it's intending to reach. And of course, things will get lost in translation if you decide just to translate. I do really love bringing up nice Google Translate examples. Just because you translate something doesn't mean it's actually going to sound good in the language that you translate into. So you can see here there's a translation of a phrase that happens most often with phrases. So turn down for what becomes rechazar lo que. So that's like reject for what. Obviously does not make sense. So good to note that translation will not really cut it when it comes to actually reaching and resonating with your intended target audience. So essentially, also with this process, you also lack the quality control. So just because you translate it doesn't mean it actually sounds or looks good. Just adding on a translation phase will not actually create content at scale that's actually at a quality that will resonate with that audience. You also suffer the out of context translations. So that's phrases that are mistranslated, that may not be relevant for that particular audience. And then of course, translation is not actually localization. And the reality is, very often if you're trying to translate content and have it resonate with a particular audience without localizing it, it will have a lasting and negative impact on your brand. And it won't be a scalable solution that will actually have a positive impact. So again, a lot of the big theme here is process, of course. It's going to be a different process, and it's going to require some work. And you'll have to figure out what works for your kind of content as well. But very often you'll have to add a localization piece very early on in the creation phase to make sure that you're creating alternative assets for your localized content. And then additionally, I would also always recommend putting in a secondary check for any localized or translated content, just to make sure that it does actually sound good to a native speaker who's not the translator. Really, really important for quality checks in order to make sure that your content is actually high quality. And then, of course, we have a couple of really important tools for accurate localization. So a language library is also really, really important. So those are your branded terms and how they translate into other languages. Also localized media library. So these are media assets that are made specifically for certain markets in certain languages. And of course, I would always recommend good translators that you might work on a long-term basis with, who know your brand, who know how to, who are perhaps local to a certain region that you're trying to reach, just so that you're actually going to get the content right in terms of translation, and then you can add the localization element onto it. So localization in a Foleon account, what can we recommend for this scalable method? We would always recommend templating your docs before localizing. So making sure that you have a master doc and that you then use copies in order to make sure that, the design is kind of set and you are creating, a localized piece that's true to the original. Also account for locale variation. So this is what I was talking about or briefly mentioned with the alternative media assets for certain markets and for certain languages. So let's just say you have a ebook in French or in English, and you're translating it into German. You're definitely going to have certain images that are in English or have English text on them. Make sure that you also have those in the alternative language. Also, you can always add translators to your accounts as authors. So this will enable text changes only, so they won't be able to change the design. And then also consider adding different workspaces or projects for your regions based off of your own account structure. So make sure that only the people who need to see the content are seeing that content. And then make sure that you definitely have a really, really good quality check for your localized content, so that there's someone besides the translator who is a native speaker or who is local to that region that you're trying to reach, looking at the content and making sure that it looks and sounds good for that particular audience. So I'm curious, how many of you guys are actually creating content in multiple languages? Let's see. All right, so just one language. So this is a method that is possible, potentially for some of you guys. It's definitely, yeah, as you can see, it's not always the most straightforward, but you could easily scale your content if you decided to localize into another languages. And also for the 4 or more languages out there, hats off to you guys. It's a difficult process, but I hope you guys are also experiencing some pretty good reach there. All right, so the last method, and maybe not the most obvious one, but what if you could have more teams within your own company creating content? I think we see this most often with sales. So if you're a marketing team and you get a lot of requests from sales, maybe to, I would say, beautify a sales proposal, or perhaps create a very small ebook for a certain set of customers. What if you pushed it back to their court and you said, hey, listen, love to do it, I'm happy to help, but maybe you can create the content first, and then the marketing team would have a review over. There are also other methods of doing this as well, but that's the one I see the most often. And it's definitely a way that you can definitely scale content creation. So if you're having somebody do a lot of the legwork for you in order to create kind of at least the foundations of the content, you're automatically going to be able to scale your content and create more content than you were yesterday. However, very often, yeah, if you do kind of engage with that scenario, you say, okay, well, create the content, go off. Usually these people will look at your beautiful website. They'll probably reference your high quality marketing materials. They'll have a look at the stuff that your content creation team has created before. And well, what actually happens in the end, you might get kind of non-branded graphics, something that they put together in Canva, a doc with a few typos potentially. They might not be a writer. They might not know your messaging as a company, or they may not be as familiar with it as you are. And I see very, very often very amateur design. So yeah, you can't expect the rest of your team to be designers and content creators all in one go. But if you're asking them to help you scale your content by creating some of the content themselves, then yeah, this is very often what happens, and it can lead to a lot of stress. And yeah, the content creators themselves, the new ones and the established ones, yeah, it can often be a lot of friction. And ultimately, you end up with off-brand content. Not good for your brand, not good for your team. So what I really see as the missing link here is, yeah, the brand connection. So do these new content creators actually understand your brand? And are they actually able to use tech to their benefit? Are they actually going to be able to navigate the tools that you're using and be able to create really great on-brand content? So I will leave this a little bit more vague than the other methods, mostly because Jerry is going to kind of walk you through exactly how we do it here at Foleon. But one thing that I do think is really, really crucial to making sure that this method works for you is first educating your new content creators outside of your team, making sure that they know your brand guidelines. Again, documentation, super crucial here. Make sure that they have access to all of the things you would want your content creators to know. Then you also have to create a process that enforces the rules or kind of guidelines that you've already set in place to make sure that you do have on-brand content in the end, and make sure that, yeah, it is also reviewed in a timely manner. And then additionally, enable. So make sure that you're also creating the circumstances to have these content creators succeed. Make sure that you're actually using tech to your benefit so that it is easy for them to create content. And then hopefully you would actually create a situation where your content is not just scalable, but also high quality. So, question, how many of you guys are have people outside of your own team creating content? Love to hear your thoughts on this. All right, so actually quite a few of you. Yeah, I also would love to hear your thoughts on how this is currently going. If you also kind of experience some off-brand content, Jerry will also give you a few tips on how to navigate that. All right, so to you, Jerry.
Thank you, Adrie. Yeah, I'm here to tell you what kind of content processes we have in place here at Foleon and how you can best use our platform features to scale your content creation. I'd like to tell you a little bit about our past content creation practices and the challenges that we faced as we're scaling up. So we encourage people from different teams and departments to build Foleon docs. For example, customer-facing teams often need to move quickly and create content on the spot. And I mean, we have a great platform for that. Our editor is very agile and user-friendly for anyone to use. But this brought up a problem. Because everyone indeed was creating content, but there was no uniform way of doing so, and the content wasn't properly governed. Everyone had their own take on our brand, visuals, and theming, and we ended up having non-governed Foleon docs and projects, which means that no one was fully responsible for looking after them. Content creation processes didn't exist, or at least they weren't documented. And as Adrie said earlier, this makes keeping existing employees in check and onboarding new hires a struggle. And there's the snowball effect that easily leads to off-brand content. As we grow as a company, we need to be confident that every single piece of content we share is always on brand, up to date, and relevant. It's super crucial for growth and success to make sure that everything you put out to the world and also internally really radiates your brand in a consistent manner. But we wanted to keep empowering different teams creating content. So we were like, hey, what if there was a way for us to keep doing this, but we had a strong enough structure in place to ensure that our brand was secured, our content was governed, and our quality was always guarded. And for this very reason, we started really looking into content operations. And for this very reason, I'm here today talking to you. So let's have a brief chat about content operations. Content operations are important for any company really that creates and distributes content. And I'm pretty confident when I say that this is quite a big part of all the companies around the world. Content operations can be described as the people, the processes, technologies that enable you to create content that meets your business objectives. So it is much bigger than a single job. It is everything in your company that makes sure that your content creation is organized and efficient, and that your content conveys the desired message. Earlier I said that I'm going to tell you a little bit about my job. So my job in a nutshell is to build, adjust, and overlook the content operation processes here at Foleon. This includes, for example, content creation workflows, content governance framework, asset management, quality control. You don't necessarily have to hire a content ops though. Just make sure that you have someone or a team responsible for the processes that enable the content creation and that these are well communicated throughout the company. When we talk about scaling content creation, it's very natural that content operations pop up, because even if you're working in a small company and you're possibly the only person in charge of content creation, it's good to have an understanding of content operations. It might not feel that helpful to you right now, but it will give you an outstanding organizational framework to build on when it is time to scale up. We're actually planning on setting up a webinar or blog series dedicated purely to content operations, if this is something that you'd be interested in listening and really wanted to dive into that topic, please let us know by commenting thumbs up in the comment section, and we'll make sure to find the best means to make it happen. Okay, so now I'll share what we here at Foleon have done and are doing to optimize our content creation. So in general, when you're building and adjusting workflows and processes, it is good to include people from different departments and teams in the task force. And especially in this case, when you want to empower multiple teams to create content and really scale that content creation, it's super valuable to understand their needs and really just use their expertise to optimize the process. This will also ensure, or at least help with the buy-in, adoption, and commitment to following the new processes. Here at Foleon, we actually have these so-called champs who contribute to the building and changing the processes and then get their teammates excited about them. Because I think we all know that it's always helpful to have people hyped up when you're dealing with change and something new. So let's talk about workflow. So this is the first thing that we wanted to really make sure that it works in our company when it comes to creating Foleon docs. So we have worked on a workflow for the whole Foleon doc creation process, from idea to publishing and also beyond. And this allows us to, at all times, know in which stage our content is, why and how it's created, and also when it needs to be adjusted or taken offline. We are using a project management tool, Monday.com, for our Foleon doc creation workflow because it caters to our needs at this very moment. It provides us with simplistic, step-by-step, yet very customizable workflow. In our workflow, we have designated content owners per department, and they are responsible that their team's Foleon docs are created in time, checked for quality, and published, obviously. And then we have content creators who are trained to write the copy and build the Foleon docs by using templates provided and approved by our designers. This is helpful, especially when you want to have many teams creating content, and mainly that everyone really knows where the responsibilities lie. And also this way, the departments and teams can independently publish Foleon docs still in a very organized and controlled manner. And well, this is exactly what we want to empower. It really doesn't matter which tools or platforms you choose to use for your content creation workflow. The most important things are obviously that you have it in place, that everyone involved knows how to use it, and also that they all use it the same way. And I know that if your company isn't creating that much content right now, it may feel unnecessary to have a workflow for it. But once you start scaling content creation, trust me, it's essential to have it in place. So it's a good idea to tackle this early on and just make sure that it's there. One tip I can give you, if you have existing workflows or if you're building new ones, include some kind of review date in the workflow. Because it's very easy to just publish and forget, and then you end up having outdated, irrelevant content online that isn't checked at all anymore by anyone. So having this review date in place will remind you to revisit the Foleon doc and see if it needs to be edited or unpublished. In our workflow, we actually have quality check incorporated, and this is something I can really recommend because we love quality here at Foleon, and I'm sure most of you can relate. And creating a bigger volume of content by more people in the company cannot be an excuse for compromising quality. It's just not acceptable. One tool that I can recommend is pre-publishing quality checklist. And as I said, it's good to be incorporated in the workflow. It is fairly easy to create, and it takes some extra minutes in the workflow to complete. So it is a very small price to pay to really ensure that your content is on brand and that it works. And just like the workflow, the quality checklist can be on any platform of your choice. It can be as simple as a Google Doc, just a list of things that you need to check, or you can have something more extensive like a checklist on Typeform. I do have to tell you though that especially for companies that create a lot of content, it is very helpful to have the responses recorded because this way you can really monitor that everyone uses it, and also you can find improvement points immediately, how you can improve your workflow. In my humble opinion, I think that every single Foleon doc should be checked for branding, grammar, functionality, and settings. Because if you have spelling mistakes, broken links, if the Foleon doc isn't responsive on tablet and mobile, it takes the quality down a lot and it can leave a bad impression. So make sure to check them always before you publish. So I've talked about a content creation workflow and different tools to use for that. And even though the workflow and the quality check need to be outsourced, there's a lot you can do within Foleon itself. I would like to know now what your favorite Foleon feature is for scaling content creation. Hopefully you're using more than one, but if I would want you to just choose one that really stands out and really works for your company and your needs. We'll get to the results later. So next, I'd like to discuss some Foleon features, and I am aware that not everything is available for every license, but I do feel that I want to really bring them up now because they are super handy for scaling content creation. So Adrie a little bit talked about this already. So in your account, you find workspaces. So you can group projects and users in workspaces based on, for example, different departments or teams or markets or languages. And when you enable team management, the users will only have access to the projects, templates, and media of the workspace that they are part of. So this way you can make sure that any confidential information or irrelevant content in other teams is inaccessible. The advantage of this setup is that you can really keep your content organized and highly relevant to your users. So it will make their work actually much easier when they work in the editor. In the editor, you can also assign user roles to your team members. We have 5 user roles available with different rights and accesses in the editor. So we have admin, publisher, designer, editor, and author. I popped a link to our Help Center article on the slides, so I recommend for you to go and read it because it has a lot more information on what all of these different roles mean and how you can really use them to optimize your content creation. The user roles don't only prevent mishaps, but also create comfort among users, because when you know that you can't really do that wrong, you feel more safe to actually work in the editor. For example, the editor role can edit Foleon docs, but they can't publish. So this is a perfect role for our content creators, because then we have content owners publishing content. So these are a very, very good feature as well to use when you're creating Foleon docs. The next thing that can really speed up your content creation process is obviously well-organized media. When you have images, videos, and documents categorized and foldered properly, it's very easy for the users who's working in the Foleon docs to find appropriate media assets to use. You can create folders and subteams on, for example, content type, for example, having campaigns, ebooks, and brochures. Or subteams, for example, brand and comms can be under marketing workspace. It's handy to have these subfolders, but make sure to keep the structure of the library fairly clean. It's better to group media together strategically and have fewer folders than having a folder inside a folder inside a folder for everything. One tip, it's very handy to have a folder for all your brand assets that holds all your branded media, such as logos, icons, branded visuals, and so on. Because these media are usually often used, so it's good to add the right version with correct size and crop, ready for the user working in the editor to use. So then you know that it's always on brand and it's always the right one that they use. And make sure that this folder is very easily accessible for everyone. Another tip is that with some images, like page cover backgrounds, you need to have a different version for mobile and desktop and tablet for the sake of responsiveness. You can use a crop tool in the media library and create folders for each device, and then you just put them there like at mobile, desktop, and tablet. And so then when the Foleon doc is ready, otherwise you just put the right images in place for each device and you're ready to go. So what if after all this, it still feels impossible to let go of control by giving more and more people in your company access to create content? Well, I have one word for you: templates. You can create templates of pages, blocks, overlays, or even entire Foleon docs and categorize them. So it makes it really easy for anyone to create on-brand, responsive Foleon docs that are, very quickly created. When you are creating templates, it's a good idea to check the responsiveness on the spot. So before you say, check that it's responsive. So then when someone else uses it in the editor or yourself, it's always ready to be published because it's already responsive. Besides templates, you can and you always should set up a theme for your Foleon docs. By using theme settings, you can easily make sure that company fonts and colors are used correctly and buttons and navigation are styled on brand. And this saves a lot of time and energy because the creator won't have to worry about it. So they can just start very easily. You have it all set there, and they just start working on the actual copy and the templates. So next we have poll results.
Yep, I'm pulling that up for you.
Yeah, so let's see which features. Yeah, okay, yeah, I'm there with you. Yeah, definitely. I love templates, so I can definitely understand that. If you said something else, I'd really like to hear in the comments what these features are. Very curious what you use for this. And as I said, it's a good idea to use all of these or multiple different features simultaneously, because that way you can really take full advantage of the platform and boost your content creation. So this is everything that I had in mind for today. Thank you so much for listening. I hope it was helpful and you're super excited to start scaling content creation with Foleon. Dennis, back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Jerry. So before we get to the conclusion of today's webinar and we address some of your questions, I first wanted to share some of the key takeaways. This is a summary of today's presentation. So some advice for scaling content creation, basically what Adrie spoke about. You should ensure that your content strategy is well documented, and that when you're working with multiple languages, that you realize that localization is probably more important than merely translating your content. And where you can, you should be empowering others to create content. This could be via the Foleon platform, if you document your content strategy well enough. And obviously some tactics that you can apply is, well, content operations, what Jerry spoke about, and then using Foleon's feature for the features that we have for collaborating with your team. Some notes before we get to the questions. You'll receive the slides and recording shortly. We also prepared a survey that you can fill out and help us improve our webinars moving forward. So I have a link here, but I'll also post it in the chat for you so you have it. Let's see.
And this is also really, really important for us to be able to, put on webinars that are going to be really valuable for you guys going forward. We really want to make sure that we're creating content and, sharing our insights and about the things that you're actually curious about. So definitely leave us some feedback. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And also maybe some topic recommendations.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, thanks, Adrie. So with that, I want to take over to the questions. I see we didn't get any questions yet, so that either means that we were really informative and everything is crystal clear, or people didn't have a chance to add any questions yet. We still have some time left, about 15 minutes before our time runs out. So if you have any questions that you would like to get addressed by either Jerry or Adrie or me, be sure to send them over. We'll just wait here for a little bit and see if some come up. And otherwise, we'll just...
there's I can also tell you guys about another method, a bonus method of scaling your content creation, which I didn't mention actually because I was like, okay, I'm going to keep it to the most regular ones that I see with our customers. But you could potentially also scale your content creation by onboarding freelancers or an agency as well to help you create more content. However, it is only as scalable as your funds are scalable, because you do need to just keep putting money into it. So not exactly something that's going to keep working for you, which is why I didn't cover it necessarily, but it is an option. I would still always follow the kind of advice and guidelines for method number one, which is adding someone to your team. In my experience, I always find the best outcomes for freelancers and agencies are always ones where you almost treat them as much as you can. You treat them as in-house content creators. You're always going to get the most out of that relationship if you do it like that. So that's a bonus method, I guess, kind of like a tag on from method number one, but always a fun one.
Bonuses are always good.
Yeah.
So I see Naomi said that the information is actually very clear, so I guess that's a compliment to us. So well done, Adrie and Jerry. I do see one question for if we have any tips for vetting freelancers or translators. I think this fits nicely into your bonus area.
Yes, documentation. Again, the broken record. I think documentation is super clear. Or it needs to be super clear. So I would have a brand handbook. I would have, again, your library for translators, or at least like your brand library for translators. And I would just have like a really good process going, like, how do you do it? How can you do it repeatedly? So not just hire one translator or freelancer off the bat, because it usually can be very informal. You just get on a call with them, you kind of see their CV, you talk about their experience, you try them out. Really document that so that if you're gone tomorrow, let's just say you're out sick, you really need a freelancer or a translator, your team really needs it tomorrow. They know how to get on with it. And that's really important for making sure that you can do it not just once, but time and time again. You're muted, Dennis.
Sorry about that. I was just complimenting your amazing answer, but I'll just keep it to myself. Okay. No, I see we got one question coming up. I'll just display it on the video now. There's a question from Jim. And he asks, yes, off topic, which are your favorite all-time Foleon publications or docs that we would actually recommend to check out? So I think that's an interesting question.
Yeah, I feel like this is also, since everyone here is a customer, it's almost like playing favorites a little bit. I'm not sure. No, Dennis, do you have a favorite?
Well, I wouldn't say necessarily a favorite. Obviously, we have a lot of examples on our website, right, of all the the amazing content that's being created by our customers. Some of them are really great. From the top of my head, yeah, there's one from Adrie. They have a country report where they investigate the markets, right, and they have like one big report for, I think it's about 30 to 40 countries. And they managed to set it up pretty nicely in a way that they had like a master doc where they basically gave the higher level overviews of specific regions. And then from that, they linked to all the reports per country, which are all separate Foleon docs. So it was a pretty impressive content piece, in my opinion, because it was really broad, right? And it had a lot of content, and they managed to split it up really nicely so to keep it condensed. So that one came up in my mind. But as I said, obviously, I would definitely recommend just going to our website, and then in the menu you have a customers drop down, and there you can go to examples. And we have about 50-ish there now, I think 60 somewhat, and we'll keep adding to that as we go. So I would definitely just recommend checking those out specifically, and maybe filter on your industry so you can find some relevant ones that are a good fit for you. So thanks, Jim. Let's see. Yeah, I don't see any other questions. Rene also said he had no question, that he loved it, so thank you, Rene. We appreciate that. So I think we'll just leave it for here then. And then, as said, our contact details are here, so you can send us an email if you want to. So if you have any questions about content strategy, you can contact Adrie. If you have questions about content ops specifically, you can contact Jerry. And if you have any other questions, well, you can send me an email and I'll try to answer it for you. And obviously, we would also be keen to connect with you on LinkedIn. and build our networks. And
yeah,
with
of
that,
course, of course, like if you have very specific questions or more general questions about how you can actually apply some of these methods for scaling your content creation, very happy to talk the details, because of course I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done based off of specific cases, right? Everything has to be taken in context for it to work. So very happy to work with you through those.
Yep, nice. Yeah, so be sure to contact Adrie if you're interested in that. And with that, thanks everybody for your time. We had a blast organizing this and also had a lot of fun. That's always great. So with that, I'll end the webinar for now, and we'll talk soon.
Great.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.